Kachina is going to be a new 4-star Geo character that's going to bring out some new things about Geo we've been waiting for a while. This video is going to be a Kachina building guide where I'm going to explain how she's supposed to be built and also her best uses and how to use her. Before I continue that though, if you're planning to get Kachina's Constellations, you're going to need quite a bit of Primo gems. The best way to buy Genesis crystals for that is going to be throughout Lootbar GG. Lootbar is going to be a very safe and secure top-up website where you can buy different games currencies including Genshin Impact. If you want to buy from there, you'd want to click the link in the description. You go to the website, choose the game, for example Genshin Impact, and then choose an offer. For example, this offer here is going to cost me around $50 in the official game store. On Lootbar, it's going to cost me $43.23. That's around $7 or 15% saved. And with coupons, you can have even more discounts. With Lootbar, you can save up to 20% when buying your Genesis crystals. But yeah, you just want to choose your offer, enter your user ID and region, make sure they're right. Click on top up now, enter your payment information, and then just click on proceed. After you do that, you just want to wait a couple minutes and then open up your game and the Genesis crystals are going to be there. Those are some reviews from their website. They're very safe and secure. Use the link in the description to get your Genesis crystals from Lootbar now. Alright, so back to the video, we're going to go through her kit very quick. Most important part about her kit is going to be her elemental skill and burst. Her normal attacks are just going to be like basic normal attacks. Her elemental skill, she's going to be able to summon like a, I don't know, Beyblade thing. It's called the Turbo Twirly. And then when you do it, it's going to be on the ground and you can either like get on top of it or get off. When you press your elemental skills button again, you can just either go on top of it or get off. When you're off of it, it's just going to stay on the ground and then deal geo damage every once in a while. And when you ride it, you're going to be able to use your normal attacks, and when you do that, you're gonna hit the ground with a thingy and deal more damage. That's pretty much all her elemental skill is. It's also gonna have night soul points and stuff like that, so you're gonna be consuming them every time you hit opponents. Her elemental burst is just gonna deal damage and then create a field, and when you're inside of that field with the twirly thing, it's gonna increase the speed when you're riding it and then also increase the attack's AoE. That's pretty much it. Her burst is gonna cost 70 energy, which is kind of expensive. For her important passives, first one is that when a party member triggers a Night Soul Burst, which is like a new Natlan thing, Natlan characters can trigger some extra damage just when they hit opponents. So when a character does that, Kachina's Geo damage is going to be increased by 20% for 12 seconds, which is pretty good. And then the second passive is that the Turbo to release damage is going to be increased by 20% of Kachina's defense. That's also pretty good. You're going to be building defense on her anyways, so this is going to be pretty good. Now that we explained her kit, moving on her playstyles, she technically have a kit to be played either as a main DPS or as like an off-field sub DPS. It's mainly about her elemental skills. I explained before, you can either leave it on the ground or you can ride it yourself. The thing is though, when you ride it yourself and player has like an on-field DPS, her damage is just not gonna be great. It's as simple as that. Her damage is just gonna be lacking compared to any like actual DPS in the game, and it's gonna be hard to clear with her. You probably don't want to use her as a main DPS. So her main role is gonna be just as sub DPS slash support. She's gonna be dealing some extra damage just off field and then also supporting your team from different things that we're gonna see in a little bit. Then with that, moving on to her talent priorities, you just want to upgrade her elemental skill and burst really. I don't even really think there's like a big difference between them, so I wouldn't really say prioritize any of them, just upgrade them at the same rate. Both of them are going to be good sources of damage. Her burst is going to be more of like a nuke, and her skill is going to be like a constant damage over time. In general, they're both important. Your normal attacks, you're never going to need them, so just leave them completely unupgraded. Alright, so now moving on to her constellations, we're going to go through them, explain them very quick, and see if any of them are worth it or necessary or not. So first of all, starting off with her C1, is that when you mount or dismount the twirly thing on the field, Kachina is going to absorb the elemental shards created by crystallized. So she's just going to attract them to her. And then also when a party member picks up a crystallized shard, Kachina is going to restore 3 energy every 5 seconds. Just a low energy increase, it's not much, but it's going to be pretty cool. I'd say C1 is good, especially as a 4-star C1. It's just gonna help you out with energy a little bit and more of like a comfort constellation. That's it. Her C2 is that when you use your burst, it's gonna give you 20 night soul points, and if there's no turbo twirly on the field, it's gonna give you one and you're gonna enter the blessing. So it's pretty much just like a free elemental skill and also some night soul points, so you can extend your elemental skill. So you can fit in a couple extra hits with her if you're playing her on field or off field. Overall, you can sum it up as just some extra hits and damage. That's pretty much it. C3 level for elemental skill. I guess it's cool. C4 is that whenever there is 1, 2, 3, or 4 opponents within like the area that your elemental burst created, the active character within the field gains 8, 12, 16, or 20% defense. That's more of like a supportive constellation. If your main DPS needs defense, then that's gonna be pretty good. You're gonna be able to gain up to 20% defense increase, which is gonna be pretty good for a lot of characters. I like this constellation a lot, especially because a lot of her teams are gonna be played in like Geo teams, and most Geo DPSs are gonna scale off with defense, so this is gonna be pretty decent. C5 level of her elemental bursts is also decent. And then finally C6 is that when your active character's shield is replaced or destroyed, like any shield, whether it's crystallized shield or any type of shields you can have, Kachina is gonna deal 200% of her defense as AoE Geo damage. So she's gonna be doing some damage when your crystallized shields are destroyed. That's gonna give them some value, which is pretty good. Usually the crystallized shields doesn't really have many values, but C6 Kachina is gonna be able to transfer them into more of like damage sources, kind of like many other reactions. So yeah, it's not gonna be like much damage, but in general it's gonna be pretty good. As a C6 I like it. But yeah, for constellations in general, I mean all of them are pretty decent. I wouldn't really say none of them are necessary. Personally I like C4. I think it's a good constellation to go for because it's gonna buff up her supportive capabilities more, but it's definitely not necessary and it's not huge or anything like that. So C0 Kachina is gonna be playable, fine. Alright, so now moving on to her weapons and polearms. Her best and obvious and free-to-play polearm that I think everyone should use is the new Natlan craftable polearm, Footprint of the Rainbow. It's the only polearm that's going to actually give you defense, and it's just going to give you a huge amount of defense, like 60-70% plus. She scales with defense, and she's going to need defense from a lot of sources, so this is going to be the polearm you'd want to use. It's also free-to-play, so everyone's going to have it, at least eventually. So yeah, I think it's just like the go-to. Even if you have many polearms, just use this one. But if you're looking for other options and you don't want to use a defense polearm, mainly you'd want to go for energy recharge options. The best ones are going to be either the Favonius, because it's also going to be like a supportive weapon, so it's going to give you energy for your whole team, or the Catch. It's going to give you energy recharge, and then also it's going to buff up your elemental burst damage, which is more for Kachina's damage. Lastly, you can go for crit weapons in general, so most 5-star weapons are going to work, or like the deathmatch or whatever. Any crit weapon is going to work, but it's mainly just as a stat stick. If you got enough defense from sources or your artifacts or whatever, you just want to use a crit weapon, then using it as a crit stat stick is going to work too. So as I said, most 5-star weapons or any crit weapons are going to work. But yeah, I repeat, really just use her free-to-play craftable weapon. Just going to give you defense. It's literally like her weapon is made for her. So yeah, I'd heavily recommend just using that weapon, and that's it. Alright, so now moving on to her artifact sets. Her main set, which I heavily would recommend, and I think I'd even say it's necessary to even like make Kachina a good character, is the new Natlan support set, Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City. The 2-piece is going to be giving you energy every time a Night Soul burst is triggered, and then the 4-piece is that whenever you do a reaction with a character using this set, it's going to give you 40% elemental damage bonus to the 2 elements that created this reaction. So for example, if you do a crystallized reaction with Kachina, you do a crystallized reaction with like Pyro, for example, the 4 party members on your team, all of them are going to be getting 40% Pyro damage bonus and 40% Geo damage bonus. It's going to be allowing her to give huge amounts of damage bonus to your main DPSs. And since she's literally the only character who can use this set, because she's the only support character from Natlan we have right now, she's going to be the best user, and I would say this is like literally the only set that makes her viable even. Because without this set, Kachina is more of like a subpar sub DPS kind of, and usually you wouldn't really want her on your team. Now, if you for some reason don't want to use this set and you want to focus more on her own personal damage, you can use the 4-piece Opulent Dreams. This is probably going to be her best damage set. The 4-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams. It's going to give you defense from the 2-piece and the 4-piece, and then also some Geo damage bonus. So yeah, it's probably going to be pretty good on her, and it's going to buff up her own damage, like her own personal damage, by a lot. Or you can use something like 2-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams, 2-piece Petra, or whatever. Just mix 2 pieces. But this is definitely not recommended. I mean, you're literally like throwing if you're using any of these sets on Kachina. Just use the new 4-piece. That's pretty much it. Alright, so now moving on to her artifact stats. Starting off with the main stats for your sands, usually you just want to use energy recharge or defense. I would say usually energy recharge is the go-to option. Unless you already use an energy recharge weapon, then in that case just go defense. But otherwise, usually this is going to be your only source of energy recharge, and she's going to need quite a bit. I'm going to tell you how much she needs in a little bit. So yeah, energy recharge sands is usually the go-to. If not, then you can go with defense. For your goblet, it's either Geo damage bonus or defense. I would say just go for whatever has the better substats. They're both going to buff up your damage. It wouldn't really be like a huge difference, preference. I would prefer Geo damage bonus, but defense is also going to work. And then finally for your circlet, I would say either crit or defense, crit rate or crit damage. Again, if you went for a crit weapon, then maybe you don't have to go crit on your circlet, but usually you probably didn't, and the circlet is going to be like your main source of crit. So you definitely want a crit rate or crit damage circlet. Now for the substats, you'd want to focus on getting enough crit rate and crit damage. Even the circlet is not going to be enough. So the substats are going to be like your main source of crit rate and crit damage. Then after that, you'd want to get defense, and then finally some extra energy recharge is not going to hurt. Now for the final stats you want to have on your Kachina, for the energy recharge, you'd want to have something like 150% to 200%. Her elemental burst is going to cost you a lot of energy, kind of a lot, it's like 70, and her being off field is going to make it kind of hard for her to gain her burst consistently. I would say the minimum is around like 150 in the Geo team, up to 200 to be like fully comfortable. Usually you just want to use your sands and then a couple substats. You're going to be setting at like 170, 180, it's going to be enough. But yeah, preferably 200 so you make sure everything is okay. And then you just want to have the normal crit rate and crit damage numbers, 50-70% crit rate or more really. And then your crit damage just keep 1-to-2 ratio, or don't if you want to have more. Just get as much as you can and it's going to be pretty good. Alright, now finally moving on to her team comps. As we've seen before, she's going to be providing more to Geo in general, and she's also a support. So usually she's going to be played better in like as a support for other Geos. Any Geo main DPS, you play her with them as a support, and she's going to be doing pretty well. She's going to be providing you with particles, dealing extra damage, allowing you to get the crystallized shards from afar, dealing damage with them if you have her C6, and so on. And then obviously with the new set, give you a huge amount of damage bonus. So yeah, as I said, mainly Geo DPSs. For example, we have Noelle. You can use her in the Noelle team. You can have like Noelle, say Fiorina, Kachina, and then Goru. Noelle is going to be your main DPS. Kachina is going to be providing a huge amount of damage bonus alongside Fiorina. It's just like a normal Noelle team, and you just slap in Kachina and she's going to work pretty well. Also, if you have her C4, it's going to provide more defense to Noelle, which is super good. Or Ito, for example, you can use an Ito team like Ito, Fischl, Kachina, then Goru. That's also going to work. As I said before, any Geo main DPS, she's going to be pretty good with, like Navia, Shiori, whatever. But she's not only going to be good with Geo main DPSs, she can be good with even like other elements DPSs, especially Natlan characters. She's going to have great synergy with Natlan characters because of this set, the artifact set. She's going to be getting more energy, and then also her passive, which is going to give her more Geo damage bonus. So you can play her with a Natlan DPS. Right now we only have Milani pretty much, so you can play her in a Milani team. Let's say Milani, Xiangling, Kachina, and then Kazuha. Very good team. The only problem with her in this type of teams where the main DPS is not Geo is that when she crystallizes, she can crystallize like the wrong elements. For example, in this team, Xiangling is going to be applying huge amounts of pyro. So there are good chances that Kachina is going to crystallize like a pyro shield. And in that case, she's going to be giving you pyro damage bonus, and Milani's damage is not going to be buffed. So yeah, that's why it's preferred to play her with a Geo main DPS, because it's always guaranteed that your main DPS is going to get the buff. But even this type of teams, you can make it work if you're being careful with your team selection. But yeah, tell me where you're going to be using her in the comments. That was the video, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.